Hi folks. Today I want to talk to you about an issue you could run into while troubleshooting problems with your vehicle. We'll call it insufficient troubleshooting or even inefficient troubleshooting. It's a situation where following OEM recommended troubleshooting can lead to finding problems in a slower, inefficient, more roundabout way. Or even worse, it could lead to parts and labor spent unnecessarily, costing time and money for nothing. For this example, we're going to use a DEF tank heater in a GHG-14 Detroit-powered Freightliner Cascadia. This setup, or a very similar one, would be found in most medium and heavy-duty Detroit-powered applications. So the unit comes in with an engine light on, an MIL, maybe a CEL, and slight D-rate or power loss also. First, we'll look at the codes. In this case, we have an SPN 3363 FMI3 and an SPN 3363 FMI5. That's DEF coolant valve circuit failed high and circuit failed open. So let's have a quick look at this circuit. It's really quite simple. Just a basic 2-wire solenoid valve. It receives a 12-volt power supply and a control or signal supply from the after-treatment control module. The ACM opens and closes the valve to control the flow of warm engine coolant through a loop in the DEF tank. This thaws the DEF when it's frozen on a cold startup, and it keeps it at an optimal temperature during cold operation. So jumping into the OEM troubleshooting for either of these faults will have you check some of the basics, which is good. Checking to see if the fault is currently active, disconnecting the valve's electrical connector, and inspecting for corrosion, damaged pins, or just poor connections in general. All good practices. If that all checks out, we should then move on to checking the integrity of the circuit. But this is where both of these fault codes begin to head in different directions. For the FMI3 circuit failed high fault, it's already determined that there is a short to 12 volts in one leg of the circuit. This would basically have you begin digging into the truck's wiring harness, looking for this mystery short to battery voltage in whatever manner you prefer. But, I don't know. This seems like it's jumping the gun. If this were the only fault code, would this method lead us to the problem efficiently? Or at all? Let's say you open up the harness and comb through every inch of it without finding a problem. Now what? So let's look at our other fault. For the FMI5 circuit failed open fault, we're asked to actually check for voltage readings at the heater valve connector. Ah yes, now this makes more sense to me. So we check each side of the circuit and find battery voltage and the proper 2.5 volt bias voltage, just as we should. If we didn't, we'd know there's most likely a problem with the circuit leading to the valve. Now we're asked to disconnect the harness to the ACM and check resistance through each leg of the circuit. Basically, this continuity test is intended to check the integrity of the circuit or harness. But does it really? If the readings are out of spec, we know that there's a problem in the harness and would focus our efforts there. If the readings are within spec, then we're told to presume the valve is bad and replace it. But what if the readings were good, you replace the valve, and the problem remains? Now what? Who pays for that? Well, since this is a real-world example of an issue I came across, I'll show you how I approached it. First, I inspect the valve and connector. The exterior of the valve is corroded and makes it look like it's in pretty poor shape, but things in our climate look this way in no time, so I try not to let that influence any decision I make. I attempt to command the valve on using diagnostic software, but it doesn't work. I disconnect the connector and find the connections to be not perfect, but fairly clean overall. Now, at this point in the FMI3 fault troubleshooting, I would then begin digging into the truck's harness, looking for that short to 12 volts. Instead, I then test each side of the circuit, just as the FMI5 fault suggests. I find proper battery voltage and a 2.5 bias voltage, all good there. Now the troubleshooting would have me disconnect the ACM and check the ohm reading through each leg. Now, here's my issue with that. A basic ohm reading through a wire tells you very little about the integrity of the circuit. One of these wires could be 95% chafed or corroded through and still return a proper ohm and voltage reading. Relying on only this could lead to a misdiagnosis with a lot of time and money wasted. So at this point, I sort of do things my own way. To test the circuit properly, it needs to be under load. The 100% safe way to do this would be to disconnect everything in the circuit and run fused power through it to a load at the other end. Now in this case, I know that the ACM is powering a small solenoid and the power drawn from a very low wattage incandescent bulb would be very similar. So I connect the lamp to the circuit and command it on with diagnostic software. The lamp lights up brightly. I can now trust that this circuit is intact and able to carry a load. Following troubleshooting, I might have arrived at this realization, but only after a lot of time spent accessing hard-to-reach components and performing more difficult tests. And before I continue, I want to stress that in this situation, this worked for me, but I do not recommend just blindly hooking up loads to circuits controlled by ECMs. You have to understand what you're doing before doing any of this. So at this point, it's safe to assume we're looking at a faulty heater valve. With all the time we saved, we can go a step further to verify this. We can measure ohms across the internal windings of the solenoid. Now, no spec is given on what the reading should be, mostly because at no point in the troubleshooting will this test be asked of you. But my years of experience tell me that it should not be something ridiculous like 749,000 ohms I found in this one. You can also apply battery voltage and ground directly to the valve and see that it doesn't react. Oh, and just for reference, here's the ohm reading from a new valve, 11.4 ohms, much more reasonable. So to wrap this up, in my situation, had I followed the troubleshooting steps, I would have eventually arrived at the proper solution. The heater valve would have been replaced and all would be well. But it would have taken much more time to get there, and I would have been relying on a lot of luck while using really subpar methods. Like most technicians, I've also been in 1,000 other situations where troubleshooting would have had me replace parts or perform quote-unquote repairs for nothing, costing customers precious time and money. So I guess the lesson here is to always be thinking about what you're doing. 95% of the time, OEM-provided troubleshooting is the way to go, and it will lead you to the problem. But these step-by-step solutions can't always account for all situations, and they're not foolproof. Thorough troubleshooting skills are invaluable. Honing your troubleshooting skills and learning new techniques over time is the best way to know when you have to deviate from the plan to get the best results. So, I guess that brings us to the end of this video. I'd like to say thanks to our current Patreon support, and hope that you too would consider supporting our content on Patreon. If you enjoyed this video or found it helpful in any way, go ahead and hit that subscribe button for more. Ring the notification bell to be notified when I upload new videos so we can see you back here for the next one. And as always, thanks for watching.